This is Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis.
Yeah, we're ready to go again. We got another special pregame edition in advance of game number 1 of the Eastern Conference Final. Tampa Bay Lightning hosting the Washington Capitals in the best of 7 series. Or if you prefer the first to 4 series. I kind of like the first to 4 series. Game number 1 set to go this evening. Face-off will be shortly after 8 p.m. Eastern time at the Amalie Arena. And then coming up on Sunday, it will be game number 2 in Tampa, also an 8 p.m. start before the series shifts back to Washington for games number 3 and 4. We are here. We're finally here. We get to the Eastern Conference Final. The Western Conference just got settled up last night with Winnipeg defeating the Nashville Predators. We'll revisit that a little bit as well, because I think there were a lot of interesting things that took place in that series. I think there's a lot of things that can be learned from that series, and also just a bit of a, careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. There were a lot of people who were kind of stoked about that series happening, and a lot of people kind of ticked off that it was actually happening in the second round. We'll get into that and a few other things as well. But a lot of the focus, of course, going to be on the Eastern Conference Final, game number 1 between the Lightning and the Washington Capitals, set to go this evening. If you are not inside the building, if you are unable to be present inside the building, and you don't have a place to hang out and watch the game, maybe you want to participate in the big viewing party that's going to be taking place outside. That sounds like a pretty good time to me, with a few thousand of your closest friends, with some refreshments, and just kind of a good way to spend a Friday evening. You know what? It's the kickoff of the start of the weekend, too. It's Friday. You've finished a long week of work, perhaps. Maybe a nice way to kind of kick off your weekend with the third round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, if you're able to attend. We managed to survive the week, and in fact, we managed to survive a week where we were absent with a couple of days of NHL games. Remember, it was kind of Tuesday. There's like, okay, well, there's a blank night. There's an off night. I get that. It's going to happen at this time of year. But then we had a second one in a row, and everybody kind of got a little case of the bends about that. But we're back into it now. It's going to be every night for better than a week at least, until somebody starts dropping off again, and then it's going to get real exciting because we'll be right back to the end of it. But every night now for a little over a week. I'm happy about it. I'm looking forward to it. I am excited about both matchups. In the Eastern Conference, with Washington taking on Tampa, I think there's a lot of intriguing storylines. I think there's a few things that haven't really been picked up on yet that people have missed. And I think the West is going to be very, very interesting as well, because when you think about it, just a year ago, Winnipeg was flailing in the wind, and they were out of it. And Vegas, well, they were a bunch of guys sitting in an office. They didn't have any players. They didn't have anybody around yet. So that's kind of cool. But after defeating each of their opponents in the first 5 games, in the first 2 rounds, I'm anxious to see what kind of test the Washington Capitals are going to present for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think it will be formidable. I think it will be significant. I think it will be a little different from previous opponents, Boston Bruins and the New Jersey Devils. And I'm thinking that this series is a little, well, it's kind of curious as you sort of go through and handicap it. I mean, it's easy to go through and go down the list of easy check marks and think, oh, well, that favors the Lightning, that favors the Lightning. Oh, that might favor Washington a little bit, but, we kind of saw it off. I think there's a lot of questions that you can and should be asking yourself about both teams, and it's not super easy to come up with all the answers. Tampa's the favorite in the series. Without question, the Tampa Bay Lightning are the favorite in this series. Do a quick overview. Have a look at the different categories. Everybody immediately goes to forwards, defense, and goaltenders, and you can look at all that. And we will, as we move through the course of the next hour. And we'll look at a lot of other things as well. A lot of other things I don't think that everyone has really taken into consideration or anticipated yet, and how it might play out through the whole series. I think everybody's going to look at the amount of experience that people have in playoffs and in conference finals. And I think there's a difference but I'm not sure that it's a significant difference. I think there's going to be a lot of focus on, well, these two teams met 3 times during the NHL regular season. And you know what you can do with that? Pretty much throw it out. I think you can look at the stats. I think you can look at the intangibles. Dare I say, if you want to examine analytics, you can look at experience, anything you want. It will all still come down to the humans that are out on the ice, that are playing in the games, beginning with game 1 this evening, facing off shortly after 8, and whether or not they can execute and come out on top of their opponent. There's lots of enthralling storylines to examine going into this series, whether it's with the Washington Capitals, the opponent, or the Tampa Bay Lightning, the home team, some of which are going to evolve as the series moves along. I think that some of the storylines that we start out with heading into game number 1 are going to disappear very quickly. And I think some of the storylines that haven't been given enough notice by some, we will. But I don't think some of the storylines given notice by some so far will start to take on a more prominent role as we move through games 2, 3, and 4. As I mentioned, one of the first places that everybody looks when you're starting to handicap and look at a playoff series and comparing the two teams head to head is the amount of experience and playoff runs that teams have. Tampa roster has playoff experience versus the Washington roster. Absolutely, we've seen in these playoffs though that experience, home ice advantage, some other things don't necessarily have the advantage that they used to. I guess it is good that Tampa has been to the conference final in 3 of the last 4 seasons, while the Washington Capitals haven't been this deep in the playoffs in decades, 20 years. But I think you can focus on the experience and what it means and get sidetracked and get consumed by it. Having playoff experience helps. It certainly does because the stage is bigger, the lights are brighter. It is a different kind of game. It is a different kind of experience because the stakes are so much higher. If you lose 1 of 82, well, of course, you're not happy about it, but it's not tragic. And you're not 25% closer to losing a series and being eliminated and having your season come to an end. Having playoff experience helps you understand how the game is different from the regular season, how the stakes are so much higher, how every play is so much more important. I don't think it's necessary to have played in the Final Four or even a Stanley Cup final to understand and embrace the big stage and the importance of games. We will hear once again on almost a nightly basis how players want to get that first shift underway, maybe touch the puck for the first time, take a shot, make a pass, have a hit delivered or deliver one themselves. And once that happens, once you get that first shift, maybe 2 out of the way, then everything settles in and everybody understands what's going on the ice. I think having experienced the playoffs is a macro of the same thing. I'm more of the opinion, how are you playing at this moment? How is your team functioning? Are you getting the offensive chances that you had hoped for? Are you playing strong and structured defense? I am much more focused on that than I am about what's gone on in the past and which team has several hundred games of Eastern Conference or conference final experience versus a team that has very little. There are going to be the previous matchups against each other. That is going to be looked at. They're going to be focused on. And again, I don't say you disregard it completely, but I think this stat and the level of experience is given much more notice and taken far more seriously than it needs to be by some. You're going to look at the previous matchups through the regular season and in the postseason will get dragged out as well, too, because Tampa's played Washington in the postseason a couple of times. Last time was 2011, not that long ago. So that's fairly recent, right? It's 2018. That was in 2011. Even me, who's not great at math, knows that that's not that long ago. You know how many players are left with each team that participated in that series? 5. That's it. 5 players participated in that 2011 series. Stamkos and Victor Hedman for the Tampa Bay Lightning. For the Washington Capitals, it's Alex Ovechkin, Nick Backstrom, and John Carlson. That's it. 7 years ago, 5 players left. That's why I think there's too much emphasis placed on what's happened in the past and with previous experience. There is, and this is only going to continue and happen at a more rapid rate, there is fast turnover in the NHL, and it's happening more and more quickly. And if you want to focus on the regular season that was just completed, a little over a month ago now, even in the regular season, I think that's going to get too much emphasis by a lot of people. Bolts were 2-1 versus the Washington Capitals. Washington gets credit for a 1-1-1 record because there was an overtime thing in there. So game number 1 between Tampa Bay and Washington was on October the 9th. Think about that. That was a lifetime ago. The amount of growth and change for both teams has been significant over that time. They are very different teams now than they were on October the 9th when they first met. In game number 1, Tampa got off to that sensational start in the season. The Washington Capitals defense was exposed as not being deep enough, not having enough talent and depth, and the Tampa Bay Lightning took advantage of it. That's been addressed by Washington. They've made some changes since then. So game number 2 between these two teams during the 17-18 regular season took place on November 24th. The Capitals won it. That was Philip Grubauer in net for the Caps on that particular night. Oh, yeah, you know who was leading the way in offense in that game? Jay Beagle. I don't expect either of those two things to happen for the Caps against the Tampa Bay Lightning in any game in the series unless it takes a wild and radical turn in one direction or another. So again, how much credit and how much notice do you want to give those two previous matchups? Not a great deal for me. Grubauer in net, Beagle leading the way on offense. Those are two things we're not likely to see this postseason in the Eastern Conference Final with Washington and Tampa Bay. Now, February 20th was the third and final time that the teams met of the three during the regular season. This one, I'll glean a little bit more from that than I will the previous two, because it's much more recent history. Tampa jumps out to a 3-0 first period lead in this game. That demonstrates to me the same kind of quick strike offense that we have seen with the Tampa Bay Lightning at times through the first couple of rounds of the postseason. In that game, where Tampa jumps out to the lead over the Washington Capitals on February 20th, Braden Point started things off with a power play goal. The Washington Capitals got into penalty trouble. Lightning wound up with a 4-2 victory. Still, that's nearly 3 months ago that took place. But those are things we can understand, we can appreciate, and we'll find far more relevant in this Eastern Conference Final setup for game number 1 between the Lightning and the Washington Capitals, and going way back to the beginning of the season in October and November, and going way back into history in terms of who has Eastern Conference Final experience and playoff experience and who doesn't. During the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, we have seen both teams evolve, even more so than we did through the regular season. For Tampa, my biggest issue through the first couple of rounds of the postseason, whether it was with New Jersey, whether it was with the Boston Bruins, playing at a consistently high level for long periods of time. When you go back to the opening round of the postseason, New Jersey, they were there for the taking. Tampa did take advantage of it, and it kicked in after a while that they started to play at a higher level on a more consistent basis. In round number 2 is where it really started to kick in a little bit more. Against the Boston Bruins, things improved. Tampa was playing at a much more consistent level, a consistently high level through the series against the Boston Bruins. We're now seeing the Lightning, who are playing up to their capabilities for longer stretches during the game. And that was the biggest thing that I was looking for. That was the biggest thing I was looking for in round 1. I was really frustrated by it. We saw it much more against the Boston Bruins. And I expect we will have to see it in the Eastern Conference Final against the Washington Capitals. But the Capitals themselves have been a team that has evolved, that has changed through this postseason. Capitals starting out in the playoffs, they lost their first 2 games, and they lost them at home. For a lot of teams, that could be devastating. This is not the recipe that you draw up for playoff success. When you're mapping out a series, a best of 7 or first to 4 against a team in the postseason, and the first one that gets to 4 victories is going to keep on playing, and the other that doesn't get there is going to be finished and out playing golf for the summer, you do not line that up and say, hey, you know what? We'll drop the first 2 games. That is not the recipe for success. And especially so if you're playing them on home ice. But that changed for Washington. They went back to goaltender Braden Holtby, who I think was a little put off, perhaps to the point of insulted, to the point of agitated, angry, to a little bit of an, I'll put it politely, I'll show you. And his attitude carried over, and he channeled that energy in the right direction out on the ice, because they went and ripped off 4 straight wins against the Columbus Blue Jackets after that. And then for the first time in 3 years, as they move into the second round, the Washington Capitals managed to find their way past their nemesis, their kryptonite, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Was it because of the Caps' outstanding play? Or was the big contributor the mental and physical exhaustion by the Pens? Because I think it was both. I'm not sure which was the bigger factor. They were both factors. But Washington wins. They get to move on. They will face the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Eastern Conference Final, set to face off a little bit later on this evening at Amalie Arena. Check it out, because I think it's going to be a sensational series. So here we are now at the beginning of it, ready to start looking as to what might actually happen in this series. There's some things that you want to watch for. There's some other items that have taken place recently that I'm curious to examine as well. In the Western Conference, Winnipeg defeats Nashville. That was I predicted Winnipeg would win. Nobody predicted the way they would win. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll look ahead to the Western Conference Final as well, if we can squeeze in some other news that's making headlines around the National Hockey League as well. But we're down to just 2 series now, the final 4 teams, Tampa Bay Lightning and Washington Capitals, opening up this evening at Amalie Arena. We're looking forward to it. At Hockey Unfiltered, at Todd Lewis Sports, our Twitter and Instagram handles. If you have questions, post them. Throw them through on our Facebook page as well, where we are streaming live, and of course on the Hockey Unfiltered app. At Hockey Unfiltered, at Todd Lewis Sports. Much more to get to in this special pregame edition of Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis. Back with much more on the game and what to look for, and some other storylines as well coming up right after this break.
Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis sends you to the biggest events at the best prices. This year, we've partnered with Seat Giant to give you special deals on tickets to NHL games, concerts, or other events. Simply go to SeatGiant.com, find the tickets you want. When you check out, use the promo code TODD for a special discount. That's promo code TODD for a special discount. Start saving with SeatGiant.com on your next purchase. Get your business started getting more leads. 1-844-SEO-LEAD. The number to call if you want more online leads for your business is 1-844-SEO-LEAD. Search engine optimization can be the difference between success and failure. It's no coincidence which businesses are listed first in Google searches. Call 1-844-SEO-LEAD. Now it's even easier to nominate your dog as the Hockey Unfiltered Dog of the Day. We do it every Saturday. Send us a photo on Twitter or now on Instagram with the hashtag HU Dog of the Day. We choose a winner every Saturday. That's simple. Now on Instagram or Twitter, send us the photo using the hashtag HU Dog of the Day, and your dog could be the one added to our gallery on the website and Facebook page. It's the Hockey Unfiltered Dog of the Day every Saturday. Cutting-edge design for manufacturing. Nova Product Design. Industrial design. Mechanical engineering and design. Nova Product Design provides experienced design for parts and assemblies, manufacturing, assembly, and serviceability. From plastic parts to sheet metal forming, mold and tool design, injection molding, and more. Nova Product Design. Visit novaproductdesign.com to learn more. So you had to get groceries, take your daughter to dance class, and a pipe burst in the kitchen. You missed Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis. No problem. All of our shows are available as a podcast right after the show airs, so you can listen when life gets in the way of hearing us live. Subscribe through iTunes and get alerts as soon as the podcast is available, or go to our website, hockeyunfiltered.com, and listen. Plus, check out the other cool stuff. The Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis podcast. Subscribe now through iTunes.
It's the Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis, a special pre-game show in advance of Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final. Tampa Bay Lightning hosting the Washington Capitals. Game number 1 set to go at Amalie Arena at 8 p.m. Puck drop will come shortly after that. Viewing party outside. There will be viewing parties everywhere as everyone gets focused on the final 4 teams still participating in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Winnipeg Jets eliminated the Nashville Predators on Thursday night. They immediately flew home back to Winnipeg, and it will be the Winnipeg Jets opening up in the Western Conference Final coming up on Saturday night. And then we'll alternate. We'll go back and forth. We'll go back and forth after a 2-day break that I think really flummoxed a lot of people earlier this week. We're back into the routine of hockey every night. I like the one game to focus on. I think it's kind of cool. We get that a few times during the regular season as well, and I like those nights. They usually happen on Monday nights. It's a quiet night normally in the NHL. You'll sometimes get one game, and all you have to do is, crack open your beverage and sit and relax and focus on one game. And of course, this being the Eastern Conference Final, there's going to be an awful lot of attention. I think there, as I mentioned in the last segment, going to be an awful lot of focus on, well, which team has more experience? Which team is more experienced? There are players on the Washington Capitals who have more Eastern Conference Final experience when they were with other teams. We had Tampa and Washington playing just 7 years ago in 2011. Those teams faced off in the second round of the playoffs. There's only 5 players left from that playoff series. 2 for Tampa and 3 for Washington. A lot of that is irrelevant. I think people get hung up on that. Sure, you want the experience. I'm sure you want to understand what it's like to play on the big stage, but they're all familiar with the playoffs. They know how the playoffs are operating this year. What you're going to have to get accustomed to quickly now is moving from your previous playoff series and facing off against your new opponent. Who adjusts to what's necessary to win 4 games first will have greater success. It's nice to have all the experience, but it is about the execution, understanding who your opponent is, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and how you put your game plan into effect to strike first and be successful. So some things to watch for in this series that opens up game number 1, Eastern Conference Final, Lightning hosting the Washington Capitals. Here's some things that I do think are significant and are important, and I think I'm going to be watching for as this series moves along. Does the offensive production continue for the top line of the Tampa Bay Lightning? Through the early part of their series against the Boston Bruins, it's where's the top line? Where's the top line? Where's JT Miller? Where's Steven Stamkos? Where's Nikita Kucherov? Where's the offensive production coming from? Is that going to continue? Because as the series moved along and in the final couple of games, they started to get their stride back. Stamkos scoring goals. aided certainly by a non-call in one particular instance. Nikita Kucherov hammering home a power play goal. JT Miller starting to contribute offensively. Will that continue as we move into this Eastern Conference Final Series against the Washington Capitals? It was coming along at the end of the series against the Boston Bruins. It needs to continue. That was the focus all through the second round against Boston. We're seeing that the Tampa Bay Lightning are capable of winning, but if you are going to win and go deeper into the playoffs, you have to have the top line start contributing in some scoring. We saw that at the end with Miller, Stamkos, and Kucherov all participating in the scoring. We need also the same great output from the second line. That has to continue. That can't dry up. We've all talked about secondary scoring, getting contributions from the second and third line on the score sheet. That's important as well. Braden Point got lots of attention for being a -5 in Game 1 of the series against the Boston Bruins. But he put that narrative away very quickly. And over the next 4 games, had some outstanding play and some outstanding production. Braden Point has 4 goals and 6 assists in the postseason so far through 2 rounds. That's only 10 games, by the way. And I'll get into a little bit more on that coming up later on, because I think that's really significant that they've only played 10 games so far. But Braden Point has 4 goals and 6 assists in those 10 games. That is only 2 points behind Nikita Kucherov. Kucherov leads the Tampa Bay Lightning with 12 points on the postseason. Now, much of that he lit up in the first round against the New Jersey Devils and got quiet through the early part of the second round series against the Boston Bruins. Braden Point has 1 more goal scored, 4 versus 3, than Steven Stamkos. Now, for what it's worth, and again, I said let's not put too much emphasis on the history of the Lightning and the Washington Capitals. And through this season, they only played 3 times, and there were a lot of things that have changed since that time during the regular season. But for what it's worth, maybe a little extra boost of confidence. For what it's worth, Braden Point also notched 3 goals versus the Washington Capitals this year. So maybe there's a little something that you can take away from that. Also for the Lightning that is worth watching and paying attention to, and that we'll have to see if the Lightning are going to be successful in the Eastern Conference Final against the Capitals. The same aggressive play from the bottom 6 forwards, from lines 3 and 4. Hard on the forecheck. Hard on the opposition. Disruptors of their opponents. The Tampa Bay Lightning forecheck aggressively, get into their opponent's end, and limit their ability to move the puck out of their own end. Washington wants to get moving out of their own end, get that first pass, skate the puck out, move it up across their blue line, and try to generate some offensive chances once they move the puck across the Tampa Bay Lightning blue line and into their end. That disruption needs to continue. The aggressive forecheck needs to continue. It also will help the Tampa Bay Lightning to continue defensive structure. This is what I talked about earlier when I mentioned that trying to find that consistently high level of play. It's not just about offense. It's not just about scoring goals and blazing up and down the ice, creating offensive chance off the rush time after time after time. Defensive structure at a high level is also important. It was absent in the games early on in the postseason against the New Jersey Devils. It was coming on and continuing to improve as the series went through against the Boston Bruins. It's continued to improve, and now we get to the point in the Eastern Conference Final where it is going to be vital for success from the start of Game 1 right through the conclusion of that series. Just look at some of the offensive weapons that the Washington Capitals have in their lineup. The guy wearing number 8 comes to mind. Alex Ovechkin has 8 goals and 7 assists in the 12 playoff games he has played so far this season. Washington can and will generate offensive chances. Defensive structure is going to be vital for the success of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Ovechkin's great regular season with 49 goals continued, and he is churning out offensive opportunities, not just in scoring goals, but with 8 goals, but he's got 7 assists as well. It is often talked about, but it is very difficult to execute a plan to stop his production. You don't ever completely stop it. You can try to limit it, you can try and slow it down, and you have to minimize his impact. And one of the important ways to do that for the Lightning is going to be on the penalty kill. That's an area that we saw that will still need attention moving forward. Boston Bruins were able to hang around as best they did in the series in the second round against the Lightning because they were able to score on the power play. Couldn't do it 5-on-5, but they could score on the power play. The penalty kill was victimized. And there are a few players that have talent and have ability on the opposing team that are going to be able to victimize mistakes on the penalty kill. Sound defensive structure, smart special team play on the penalty kill. If you leave an opening, Ovechkin will take advantage of it. We have seen the one-timer go in too many times. 3 of Ovi's postseason goals have been on the power play. His line mate, Evgeny Kuznetsov, has also emerged as a serious offensive threat in this postseason. 14 points, 7 goals, 7 assists. So there is question about Nick Backstrom, of course, because of that hand injury. He did not skate in the pregame opportunity earlier on Friday. He is listed officially as a game-time decision. He's probably not playing. However, Washington just beat Pittsburgh in Game 6 in overtime without Nick Backstrom. And hands up if you really thought that was possible. I'm not so sure many did. You may not have Nick Backstrom in the lineup. You may not have him to worry about in game number 1. Who's to say what happens in game 2, 3, and beyond in this series? I'd say it's unlikely that he's there in game number 1, but Kuznetsov has filled in more than capably as a top-line center. And don't dismiss the work of other forwards by the Washington Capitals either. Lars Eller has had a sensational playoff, and he's been asked for more during the absence of Nick Backstrom. Strong defensive structure will be necessary. The other injury note for the Washington Capitals we're paying attention to is Andrei Burakovsky, who left the lineup because of an injury, had to have what's being discussed as a surgical procedure. He was back on the ice and, in fact, did participate in the pregame skate on Friday. He, too, is listed as a game-time decision, but he's taken line rushes. I'm thinking he's going to play. Now, how is he going to be after a couple of weeks off and missing time? Sure, he's going to be a little bit off, but still, another offensive threat that has to be worried about. Strong defensive structure is absolutely necessary on the penalty kill and 5-on-5 for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm really intrigued about the goaltending matchup with Braden Holtby versus Andrei Vasilevsky. I think there's a number of other intangibles that have to be looked at in terms of this matchup between the Lightning and the Washington Capitals, Eastern Conference Final that gets set to go later on this evening. I think it's going to be really intriguing. I think there's a few things that haven't really been looked at or thought about yet. We'll get into that coming up. We do have the line combinations as we expect to see them for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and also how the Washington Capitals had their line structured during their pregame skate. Will it shake up? Will it change? It's possible. Those kind of games continue to be played. We'll get into that as well. I do want to touch on a little bit out west as well, with Winnipeg coming up with a victory against the Nashville Predators. Who predicted that series would play out the way it did? We'll get into that and a few other things as well, plus some of the other intangibles that you want to look for in terms of the Lightning versus the Washington Capitals later on. At Hockey Unfiltered, at Todd Lewis Sports, our Twitter and Instagram handles. Much more to get to as our remaining minutes continue. Getting you set, this special pregame edition of Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis comes back after the break.
Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis sends you to the biggest events at the best prices. This year, we partnered with SeatGiant to give you special deals on tickets to NHL games, concerts, or other events. Simply go to SeatGiant.com, find the tickets you want. When you check out, use the promo code TODD for a special discount. That's promo code TODD for a special discount. Start saving with SeatGiant.com on your next purchase. Get your business started getting more leads. 1-844-SEO-LEAD. The number to call if you want more online leads for your business is 1-844-SEO-LEAD. Search engine optimization can be the difference between success and failure. It's no coincidence which businesses are listed first in Google searches. Call 1-844-SEO-LEAD. Now it's even easier to nominate your dog as the Hockey Unfiltered Dog of the Day. We do it every Saturday. Send us a photo on Twitter or now on Instagram with the hashtag HU Dog of the Day. We choose a winner every Saturday. That's simple. Now on Instagram or Twitter, send us the photo using the hashtag HU Dog of the Day, and your dog could be the one added to our gallery on the website and Facebook page. It's the Hockey Unfiltered Dog of the Day every Saturday. Cutting-edge design for manufacturing. Nova Product Design. Industrial design. Mechanical engineering and design. Nova Product Design provides experienced design for parts and assemblies, manufacturing, assembly, and serviceability. From plastic parts to sheet metal forming, mold and tool design, injection molding, and more. Nova Product Design. Visit novaproductdesign.com to learn more. So you had to get groceries, take your daughter to dance class, and a pipe burst in the kitchen. You missed Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis. No problem. All of our shows are available as a podcast right after the show airs, so you can listen when life gets in the way of hearing us live. Subscribe through iTunes and get alerts as soon as the podcast is available, or go to our website, hockeyunfiltered.com, and listen. Plus, check out the other cool stuff, the Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis podcast. Subscribe now through iTunes.
Welcome back. It's a special pregame edition, Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis, getting you set for game number 1 of the Eastern Conference Final between the Washington Capitals and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Face off shortly after 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The Western Conference Final begins on Saturday. Winnipeg is hosting Vegas after the Jets have defeated the Nashville Predators. At Hockey Unfiltered, at Todd Lewis Sports, our Twitter and Instagram handles. We'll, of course, be here right through the weekend. Our regular programs go live Saturday and Sunday, 11 Eastern. 8 a.m. Pacific at hockeyunfiltered.com, streaming live on the Hockey Unfiltered app. Back with all of our regular great guests, great info, and features over the weekend as well. Plus, we will have another special pregame edition coming up on Sunday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, in advance of game number 2 of the series. I think we'll know a lot more about the series after game number 1. I think there's going to be some storylines that start to develop in game number 1, and some of the ones we're thinking about, or some are thinking about, believing to be important, won't necessarily be top of mind after game number 1. I mentioned that I did want to touch on the West just a little bit, because I found the whole Winnipeg and Nashville thing so intriguing for a number of reasons. That it happened once again, that the team was built to win it all this year after coming up a little short the season before, is done and out of the playoffs. The Preds won the President's Trophy. They're finished after 2 rounds. Now, to be fair about it, they got beat by the team that had the second best record in the regular season, and it's not really an upset. It's not something that you should be overly concerned about, getting beat by the team that had 3 points fewer than you did. There is an area, though, for Nashville that is a legitimate concern going forward, and it's goaltending. If you were with us on any of our programs over the last couple of weeks, I said early on in the series, Pekka Rinne, I've seen some of his play, and it's a little troublesome to me. He got pulled in the second round for the second time. And I said, yeah, I know he's going to win the Vezina Trophy, and he's had an outstanding regular season, but that's twice now he got pulled. Oh, and then it happened a third time, and then we saw the debacle that took place on Thursday night. This can't happen if you're going to be a Stanley Cup contender. Everybody said the expected things as team players do during the game on Thursday night. PK Subban was interviewed between periods and said, oh, he's the reason why we're here. He's bailed us out on so many occasions before. It's predictable. It's fairly accurate. But you can't have that type of awful performance in a Game 7 when your team is built and counting on you to run deeper into the playoffs. You can't have these kinds of meltdowns in the postseason and win. And I'm not just talking about the series against the Winnipeg Jets. He didn't look great against Colorado on more than one occasion. And it happened last year, too. Remember the Cup final against Pittsburgh? Couldn't get past that mental hurdle. Great guy. Really good goaltender. As I said, he's going to win the Vezina Trophy this year. But goaltending is something that's going to have to be addressed by the Nashville Predators going forward. Can you really go into next season without any concern that this won't happen again if you're in the same position? You'll be reminded of it plenty. You want to go through another grueling 82-game regular season and then have your goaltender implode during the playoffs? Not me. Not if I'm in charge with Nashville. I'm exploring options. It might be that your next goaltender is already in-house and you Ciceros, but I'm finding another option too. Next year, by the way, is the final season of Pekka Rinne's contract with the Nashville Predators for $7 million. I think he signed a 7-7 deal. But next year is the final year of his contract. Also heard a little bit from Kevin Cheveldayoff earlier on Friday. He mentioned something that was really interesting to me. Said in an interview on Friday, there were a number of 8:30 p.m. starts in their series with the Nashville Predators. That's unusual. And that really means that puck drop is around 8:45-ish. And that's local time. I'm not talking Eastern time. That is local time. Puck drop is around 8:40 or 8:45. And it's all done for TV so that we that live in the Eastern time zone can see the game at the most reasonable hour and not have very much overlap with an earlier game on the schedule that starts around 7. The key point that Cheveldayoff mentioned, it seemed as if it was easier for the road team to adapt to that late and unusual start time of puck drop around 8:45 or so. Much easier for the road team to adapt to that than it was the home team. And maybe that was why there were so many road victories in that series. I mean, people picked the Jets, people picked the Nashville Predators. It was a coin flip sort of series because the two teams were so close in their records. As I mentioned, Nashville finished only 3 points ahead of the Winnipeg Jets. But what we saw in that series did not play out exactly as it was expected because there were so many road victories. Jets won 3 of their games in that series on the road. Preds won 2. First team to score won 6 of the 7 games. Okay, that's fairly expected. The only one that had that had a comeback in it and a lead change was the big mega rebound from the Jets where they went down 3 goals in the first period. Mark Scheifele sets an unbelievable record of 7 goals in a playoff series scored on the road. Maybe Cheveldayoff was right. Maybe that quirky start time has something to do with it. Another thing about this series, too, with Nashville and Winnipeg, Jets winning and moving on. They will host game number 1 of the Western Conference Final coming up on Saturday. Remember going down the stretch in the regular season and then into the playoffs when they started in early April. Remember all the griping and moaning and whining, and I'll use those polite terms as opposed to some of the other. All the griping and whining and moaning that went on about how it was such a travesty that these two teams, Winnipeg and Nashville, were potentially lining up to meet in the second round. And then after, of course, they won their first round matchups, they did meet in the second round instead of the conference final. There was all kinds of griping about the playoff system and how awful it was and how terrible it was that this couldn't be a conference final matchup. What gets forgotten is that there's no guarantee that would ever happen, even if the playoffs were structured that way. But this matchup between Winnipeg and Nashville, it wasn't the mega, super, giant, fantastic series that it was built up to be. I don't think it achieved the level of expectation. Some of the hockey in this series wasn't particularly joyful to watch. It wasn't as exciting and theatric and dramatic as I was expecting a good portion of the time. We didn't have two really gifted, talented teams going up and down the ice trading chances for 60 minutes or more. A couple of the games, the ones that Nashville won, were lockdown. Get the lead, lock it down, don't allow much. Goaltender helps you out when needed. Jets had spurts, but it wasn't the brilliant, graceful display of hockey that I was expecting from these two teams. Sure, there were some good moments. I enjoyed some of it. Hey, being down 3 goals and coming back and winning, that was pretty cool. That was pretty dramatic. But overall, when you take a look at the entire series and examine the 7 games that were played between Nashville and Winnipeg, it had some twists and turns and a bunch of the unexpected. But it wasn't really in the positive sense, a lot of it unexpected. Hellebuck stealing game number 1, okay, that's pretty good. Goaltender melting down at the other end through the series, that's not very good. Couple of really tight, close games, not very much going on, described as good road games. That also reads as dull hockey and at times painful to watch. So I don't know. It wasn't the great series that it was made out to be and hyped up to be at the start. I'm excited for Winnipeg. I think it's great. I think it's a tremendous story that the team has come back there and after a long absence and had some success. And I think it's going to be quite thrilling and interesting to see how they face up and line up against the Vegas Golden Knights in the Western Conference Final. We'll get into more of that over the weekend on our regular program, Saturday and Sunday, 11 Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Our special pregame show on Sunday as well, 3:30 Eastern on the Tampa Bay Power Play Network in advance of Game 2. But we'll focus on some of the other things to look for in game number 1, some of the other keys to success and key areas that I'm going to be keeping an eye on in game number 1. Final segment, this hour is flying by. Looking forward to the start of the Eastern Conference Final. Later this evening, Tampa hosted Washington at Hockey Unfiltered, at Todd Lewis Sports, the Twitter and Instagram handles. Final segment, starting lineups, and much more, all straight ahead when we come back.
Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis sends you to the biggest events at the best prices. This year, we've partnered with Seat Giant to give you special deals on tickets to NHL games, concerts, or other events. Simply go to SeatGiant.com, find the tickets you want. When you check out, use the promo code TODD for a special discount. That's promo code TODD for a special discount. Start saving with SeatGiant.com on your next purchase. Get your business started getting more leads. 1-844-SEO-LEAD. The number to call if you want more online leads for your business is 1-844-SEO-LEAD. Search engine optimization can be the difference between success and failure. It's no coincidence which businesses are listed first in Google searches. Call 1-844-SEO-LEAD. Now it's even easier to nominate your dog as the Hockey Unfiltered Dog of the Day. We do it every Saturday. Send us a photo on Twitter or now on Instagram with the hashtag HU Dog of the Day. We choose a winner every Saturday. That's simple. Now on Instagram or Twitter, send us the photo using the hashtag HU Dog of the Day, and your dog could be the one added to our gallery on the website and Facebook page. It's the Hockey Unfiltered Dog of the Day every Saturday. Cutting-edge design for manufacturing, Nova Product Design, Industrial Design, Mechanical Engineering and Design. Nova Product Design provides experienced design for parts and assemblies, manufacturing, assembly, and serviceability. From plastic parts to sheet metal forming, mold and tool design, injection molding, and more. Nova Product Design. Visit novaproductdesign.com to learn more. So you had to get groceries, take your daughter to dance class, and a pipe burst in the kitchen. You missed Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis. No problem. All of our shows are available as a podcast right after the show airs, so you can listen when life gets in the way of hearing us live. Subscribe through iTunes and get alerts as soon as the podcast is available, or go to our website, hockeyunfiltered.com, and listen. Plus, check out the other cool stuff. The Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis podcast. Subscribe now through iTunes.
Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis. It's a special pregame edition on the Tampa Bay Lightning Power Play Network in advance of game number 1 of the Eastern Conference Final. Lightning hosting the Washington Capitals. Puck drop shortly after 8 p.m. this evening. Lots more to come to get you set for the game. Where are you watching the game? If you're in the building, fantastic. If you're outside at the viewing party, also fantastic. But looking forward to quite an interesting contest, and I'm anxious to see how it all plays out in game number 1. There's going to be an awful lot made of experience. I think that many people are putting much more emphasis on that than is really necessary. Oh, there's a history between these two teams. They only played 7 years ago in 2011. Only 5 players remain. I don't think that's going to be a big deal. I think the goaltending matchup is one of the areas that I'm really fascinated to watch. Holtby versus Vasilevsky. Braden Holtby, since coming back in, when Philip Grubauer lost the second game of the first-round series against the Columbus Blue Jackets, since Holtby came back in, he's been a stud. He's been really good. 8-3 record, .926 save percentage, 2.04 goals against average. Andrei Vasilevsky has been equally good. 8-2 record, .927 save percentage. 2.20 goals against average. It's an even up match. I don't know. It's maybe an edge to Vasilevsky. Sure, the goals against is slightly higher than it is for Braden Holtby, but you know what? If you count experience, Braden Holtby has never played this deep in the playoffs. Vasilevsky's been great. He hasn't been called upon to play as well as Holtby has at times because Vasilevsky hasn't had to seal a game. He hasn't had to hold his team into a game to steal a game so that they can have success in a series. A couple other things to watch for in this contest. I don't think either of these teams are overly physical. There's the presence of Tom Wilson, of course, but he's just a big galoot who likes to throw his weight around and inflict questionable hits. His physical game is something you pay attention to, but I don't think of the Caps as a much discussed heavy kind of hockey team. Same with Tampa Bay. They are not a bruising team by any stretch of the imagination, but don't mistake that for not being able to handle a more physical style of play. Every puck that you battle for is not just reach in with your stick and pull it out. It's going to be a game where you're going to be required to be physically engaged with your opponent. Tampa will deliver hits when necessary. They can also get in and battle to areas of the ice where they need and want to be for better scoring chances. It's not about delivering physical punishment per se, but it's a determination and a capability of fighting for pucks, fighting for space out on the ice. We have seen throughout the playoffs incredibly inconsistent officiating, and I think I'm being very complimentary by putting it that way. Who's to say what will or what won't be called on any given night? And there's going to have to be that determination to play through some of the restraining that may go on. How's that? The mental game is going to be part of this as too. Likely an issue early on in the series, maybe just for game 1. Maybe there's nothing here, but I think it's worth noting. So much attention on the Caps about whether or not they could finally beat the Penguins. Will it happen? And did you see the faces after they won in overtime? There was an enormous weight that was lifted off that team. Enormous. What happens now? What happens now to Washington? Do they stay engaged, or was the mission all about beating Pittsburgh? I know they're saying the right things, but I'm intrigued to see how this plays out. Home ice advantage. A lot has been made about that through the postseason, that the winning team has more often than not been the visiting team. I don't think that's going to play into this equation because Tampa defies what has gone on in all of the other series. And I think that's going to be worth noting. And I think home ice will play to the advantage of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Promised you the lines: Miller, Stamkos, Kucherov, Palat, Point, Johnson, pretty much as we expect. Kaloran, Cirelli, Gourde, Kunitz, Paquette, Callahan, the defense pairings: Hedman, Girardi, McDonough, Stralma, Coburn, Sergachev, and yes, Andrei Vasilevsky in goal. Here's what Washington posted in the morning: Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, and Wilson back in from the suspension. Vrana, Eller, and Oshie will make up the second line. Andrei Burakovsky back, it looks like, from injury, besides Stevenson and Connolly. Devontae Smith-Pelly, Jay Beagle, and Chason make up the fourth line. Kempny and Carlson, an underrated player, Michael Kempny, by the way, worth keeping an eye on. Orlov and Niskanen, Orpik, and Juice. Braden Holtby will get the start in goal. I think it's going to be a really intriguing matchup between these two teams. Some of the areas that have gotten a lot of focus, maybe not so much. Is the top line going to be able to keep scoring? It's going to be essential for the success of the Tampa Bay Lightning for them to do that. The top line started to get their production going in the latter part of the series against the Boston Bruins. I think that we will see that continue. The second line with Braden Point, Palat, Johnson, that has to continue as well. Determined forecheck and effort to limit opportunities, and strong, sound defensive structure, especially on the power play. Much like the Bruins did at times in their second round series against the Tampa Bay Lightning, if you give the Washington Capitals an opportunity on the power play, they will beat you with it. They will score goals. They will produce offensively. Alex Ovechkin has 3 power play goals of his 8 in the postseason scored on the power play. Evgeny Kuznetsov has 2 goals on the power play as well. That's where the threat is. Do not put them on the power play. I think it's going to be an intriguing matchup. And as mentioned, I think that the home ice advantage will play to the Tampa Bay Lightning. We've seen that the records between home and visiting team has been a little lopsided early on throughout the other postseason, but I don't think that plays out in this particular instance. The other one that I think is going to be key: Tampa's only played 10 postseason games. Disposed of New Jersey, disposed of Boston early. And a lot of people, the common pick is that, well, you have to give the credit to the opposition. Well, we'll pick Tampa in 6 games. Could be a faster series. And if it is, that will only help the Tampa Bay Lightning to move on and face whoever the opponent is in the Stanley Cup final. Could be a faster series, but yes, I do see Tampa winning out in this one. Too many weapons, too many opportunities to take advantage of. Been a great game number 1 pregame. Looking forward to a great game number 1 this evening between the Caps and the Lightning. And we will have another special pregame edition of Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis Sunday afternoon, 3:30 Eastern, plus our regular program Saturday and Sunday at 11 Eastern. Enjoy game number 1. Enjoy the start of the Western Conference Final as well. It's going to be a great weekend of hockey. Back with you at our regular times Saturday and Sunday.
Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis sends you to the biggest events at the best prices. This year, we've partnered with Seat Giant to give you special deals on tickets to NHL games, concerts, or other events. Simply go to SeatGiant.com, find the tickets you want. When you check out, use the promo code TODD for a special discount. That's promo code TODD for a special discount. Start saving with SeatGiant.com on your next purchase. Get your business started getting more leads. 1-844-SEO-LEAD. The number to call if you want more online leads for your business is 1-844-SEO-LEAD. Search engine optimization can be the difference between success and failure. It's no coincidence which businesses are listed first in Google searches. Call 1-844-SEO-LEAD. Now it's even easier to nominate your dog as the Hockey Unfiltered Dog of the Day. We do it every Saturday. Send us a photo on Twitter or now on Instagram with the hashtag HU Dog of the Day. We choose a winner every Saturday. That's simple. Now on Instagram or Twitter, send us the photo using the hashtag HU Dog of the Day, and your dog could be the one added to our gallery on the website and Facebook page. It's the Hockey Unfiltered Dog of the Day every Saturday. Cutting-edge design for manufacturing. Nova Product Design. Industrial design. Mechanical engineering and design. Nova Product Design provides experienced design for parts and assemblies, manufacturing, assembly, and serviceability. From plastic parts to sheet metal forming, mold and tool design, injection molding, and more. Nova Product Design. Visit novaproductdesign.com to learn more. So you had to get groceries, take your daughter to dance class, and a pipe burst in the kitchen. You missed Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis. No problem. All of our shows are available as a podcast right after the show airs, so you can listen when life gets in the way of hearing us live. Subscribe through iTunes and get alerts as soon as the podcast is available, or go to our website, hockeyunfiltered.com, and listen. Plus, check out the other cool stuff. The Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis podcast. Subscribe now through iTunes.